Hello, and welcome to Home Age Conversations, a podcast about the residents. I'm Mole, and I think tuna is just delicious.
I'm Rabbit, and Nasty says hello.
I'm Kat, and I think tuna should be outlawed. It's disgusting, looks smelly.
And I'm Mew, and I just had a bacon cheeseburger with 2 patties.
Spoiler reference.
It is a reference.
In tunas.
Also known as Intruders. So Intruders is the most recent
recording.
Residents album. It's inspired by the persistence of obsession, and it focuses on the unseen and uncontrollable spirits stuck in the seams of our minds, which is, man. The songs are about doubles, doppelgangers, alter egos, alternate selves, a lot of focus on identity here, ironically or unironically enough. And the sound has been described as atmospheric, paranoia-tinged, yet oddly accessible.
I would agree with that. It does sound very, it sounds very nightmarish to me.
A little bit.
So, Intruders follows a more literal album, Ghost of Hope, and it comes after the end of the Randy, Chuck, and Bob trilogy. This is in the new era of the Residents, known as the Real Residents. This is... Oh, God. Outdated. And you can see them in the physical release, either the CD or the vinyl. A little picture of them, which is Tyrone, Iki, Erky, and Cha-Cha, or whatever the names are. Doesn't really matter.
So the sound on this album, compared to Ghost of Hope and a lot of their previous releases, I mean, it's markedly different, but not in the straightforward way that a lot of the stylistic changes between albums have been. Because this album, the sound of it, in terms of instrumentation, vocals, so forth and so on, changes wildly between tracks and even within tracks themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, when you compare, the sound of certain tracks on here and their live renditions, because in Between Dreams, which is this, Intruders had tracks added into the set list, and by tracks I mean one track, in addition to some upcoming tracks from the album Dyin' Dog. And when you compare those compositionally to the songs that have preceded them, it's sort of a whole different world overall. It feels like there's been a change in tone, almost. Something sort of hard to describe in there.
In a way, Intruders is kind of a stepping stone in sound.
I like to say that it kind of gets you ready, and then the upcoming album will throw you right into it. It's going to be fun.
So, within Intruders, it's similar to other projects they've done in the past, wherein they're both looking at the past and looking towards the future, such as we've seen in the American Composer series, We've Forgotten 3 Persons, QB, the Freak Show album, and before their big CD-ROM endeavors, this Freak Show album, the DVDs of previous work, between DDA and Animal Lover.
They're looking at subject matter that they've touched on in the past. Themes of duality and doubles are prominent and show up in, a large majority of Residents projects. So it even goes as far back as Vileness Fats with Arf and Omega.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 80s, you've got The Replacement. If you take, the theme of duality, at least in terms of, contrasting two individuals or two groups, you could even say that the Mole series is a part of this ongoing theme, and then of course God of 3 Persons is, and then Tweedles is in a whole lot of difficult, strange ways. So is Bunny Boy, and so is even Talking Light, because the Mirror People.
The Mirror People.
But even with they have themes of duality within the releases of projects, right? So they had the 2-part release of Fingerprints and Baby Fingers, and for a while there in the 90s, they had a thing going where they would release an album and then tour it, or release not an album, but release a project and then tour it. So you had that with Wormwood, you had that with Icky Flicks and Demon Stands Alone.
Even with the duality in the releases, even something like Duck Stab and Buster and Glenn, they're like two parts, they're like doubles of each other, really, which is kind of interesting considering Duck Stab and Buster and Glenn aren't really super conceptual albums, but they still sort of, they're kind of
Go together.
They still have that theme that's present in like a majority of the Resonance projects.
Yeah, and another one of those ubiquitous themes, you know, is the theme of obsession.
Obsession! 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 Obsession!
And so you get those themes of obsession with God in Three Persons. You get it with Freak Show with like Tex and Wanda, and Benny and his wrestling lady. You get it with the Gingerbread Man.
River of Crime.
Animal Lover, River of Crime. The Voice of Midnight. And you see it with the Randy, Chuck, and Bob trilogy, and it shows up pretty blatantly, and I think interestingly, in Brick Eaters. And that's just the ones where it's made like a major point, but you can see it in so many of their works. It's ridiculous. And Intruders, like many of those other projects, is story-driven. And so within Intruders, you know, the varied sound, the varied kinds of stories in there, it all seems like nods to previous works in so many different ways.
Almost very directly with Still Needy.
So Intruders has a lot of the blend of the new and the old like that. And another way it does this is with the collaborators on there. These are a lot of familiar names, but also a couple of unfamiliar names and semi-familiar names. So you get, you know, Nolan Cook, Laurie Hall, Peter Whitehead, Siobhan Lioncub, who was brought on by a certain fellow who you may know from
Everything.
everywhere. He's done everything ever. What's his name? It's Eric Drew Feldman. I think it's time to actually talk about the tracks on the album. Luckily for everybody, we have these categorized in a different sort of order. See, with the variety of themes that show up in the album, we thought it might be useful to categorize them not by, you know, the order they were put in on the album, because, like, it's so mainstream.
Especially when the
Cool.
vinyl releases in a kind of different order, so...
So, we organized them by the themes that seemed apparent to us. So the first theme that we're going to start off here with is the tracks with a certain focus on the idea of doppelgangers.
Doppelganger? I hardly...
So the track we're starting with here in discussion is Good Vibes.
Yeah. Well, okay,
Very spoken
can we
word.
just, first off, why is it called Good Vibes? Because there are...
The guy...
The vibes... Yeah, the vibes in this song are very not good. I would even say...
The guy's
I would go so far as to
Yeah.
say they're bad. They're bad vibes. They're
There's not even
spooky
any
vibes
vibraphones
to a certain extent.
in this song. I don't think. So there's no
0
reason
out
why.
of 10. When is Carla going to do something about this? I think, musically, I mean, overall, the track really reminded me of, Night Train to Nowhere, and the whole, Randy's Ghost Stories.
Oh man, I love Randy's Ghost Stories. That is an essential October listen.
Oh, for sure. It's got kind of a meandering, suspicious, dark, like, modern Residence kind of feel to it.
To me, Good Vibes was almost like it read like it felt almost like a screenplay, like stage directions.
Yes. I mean, it's genuinely one of the creepier Residence tracks, like, ever.
Yes.
Because all of these tracks are accompanied with stories, except for one of them. And, I mean, this whole album just really points to the fact that if a Resonance album comes with stories, it comes with stories for a reason.
Yes. The story, you could, like I said, it read very much like stage directions or like some kind of like a script. Like you could like very visually see what was going on, like sitting there, like you could picture almost all of it like vividly, and it's just this.
I think it's because the actual, not the lyrics, but just the written story that goes along with the track.
Yeah.
It has a lot of details,
Yeah.
just visual details.
Yes.
And then the track itself with the lyrics, or rather the spoken word, is very, it's filled with a lot of personality. So it just gives you a very good, complete picture of this weird scenario.
It captures what I think is a pretty essential Residence theme, is contrasting this really dark, horrifying, strange, incomprehensible stuff with a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Because after all these intense descriptions of seeing, oh my god, where the story is very, very strange. It actually reminds me a lot of the story for Tongue off of Demon's Dance Alone.
I brought it up a lot because in that the wives of Tongue usually it goes fine for a while and then suddenly they rapidly lose weight and die.
Yeah, and within the story for Good Vibes, this dude is essentially withering away as after he sees the continuous appearance of his doppelganger outside of his window, and they both seem to wither away in parallel.
In tandem.
In tandem, thank you.
Brothers in arms. You starve, I starve.
Yay, it's a starvation pact, like a suicide pact, only slower.
I don't know. It's just so weird.
I know. It's weird.
And then they bring in the humor because the best line, I think, in Residence history.
I'm sitting here now eating a bacon cheeseburger with 2 patties.
I was listening through the album with a friend of mine, and after he heard that line, like the first thing he said was, "What is this song?"
He got all the way to the end before he was like, "What is this song?"
Yeah, it was kind of like background, and then you heard that line.
This song kind of reminds me
look
of the Bunny Boy, and how there's this weird thing going on.
It's weird.
He's kind of like understanding that there's this weird thing going
It's
on,
weird.
but he doesn't fully believe it. He's not completely crazy, but like he kind of is, but not really.
Yeah.
Right? It's very vague.
It's almost putting you in in their headspace where it's like, what the heck? What's going on?
What the H?
Okay, alright, so it sounds like I'm crazy, but I'm dying.
And of course, there's the trademark singing resident. Can you even call it a line? I don't know what it is, but it's the okay, alright.
Okay, the weight loss thing is getting scary.
And he's right. It is.
It is.
What did he drop down to again?
60,
He lost
86.
68 pounds.
Oh.
Even though he's eating double bacon cheeseburgers.
So it turns out the
patties.
intruder in this story is a tapeworm.
And with that, let's move on to Running Away,
All right, now I can.
which is our other doppelganger track. This track is actually, it's a bit of an anomaly, right? Because with most of these stories, the song and the story that accompanies it are from the same perspective. There's this guy, and his life is going in, it's getting sucked down the sewer just like manure. Sucked down the sewer in the Big Apple. And one day he just wakes up, and he's like, man, I'm gonna go to a baseball game. So he goes to a baseball game, and he gets all ready to head out, and then as he gets there, he arrives at the precise moment at which the bus is pulling away. And so the story is from that perspective, but the lyrics are actually from the perspective of, well, maybe not the doppelganger, because who knows who is who. Yeah.
The one in the
but
bus.
Whoever, the version of this man that's on the bus, yeah. Is the one that is singing the song. And it almost, it's very strange, right? Because, I mean, big surprise, it's weird.
I know.
The story
It's weird.
is telling, basically about how terrible this guy's life is, and it seems like the version of this guy that's on the bus knows this, you know, saying that the other him was anxious, abandoned, and alone. That's where the name of the track is referenced.
This track to me was quite disorienting. They all are, but I was like, okay, I got this Intruders thing down. This one's about a guy who sees his double. Okay, been there, done that. And then, like, when the track starts actually playing, it's like, wait a minute. Hey, hold up. and then you realize it's about the other guy. And every track has just this weird vagueness to it.
It's weird.
Just, it gets in your mind.
Would you say it
becomes
intrudes?
an intruder.
Yeah.
Oh, the tracks become the
They really
intruders.
do. So that's
Would you
obsession.
say we become
It's-
obsessed?
It's like a bear trap.
And I think the way that this still kind of baffles me. I'm not quite sure what it means. But the fact that the track itself is called Running Away, it's sort of like, I mean, this is something that also shows up in Good Vibes, right? Trying to escape their doppelganger.
Yourself?
To escape this fate of theirs that seems to be constantly pursuing them.
Because we've got the last verse here. I've just pulled it up. Because it says, closing it around was the sound of disbelief, the nothingness of grief, the color of conceit, the odor of conceit and deceit, and the emptiness of need and the meaningless of me.
It's such a
And it's like,
good line of rhymes.
Mhm.
it is. But it's like, is Bus Boy talking about Bus Boy, or is he talking about Bus Stop Boy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is he saying that it's closing it around himself, or himself?
Here's the thing, like,
If that makes sense.
both of them, in a way, are running away. Just one of them actually got to go to the baseball game and distract himself,
Yeah.
while the other one is like, just, I don't know, we don't know what happens to him, but
Could it be, though? Could it possibly be? Here's something to consider: that one of them is not leading that downtrodden life.
That's what I was thinking, because in the story, he was in the story, he says that him on the bus was waving at him. Almost, you don't. I don't know about you
That's
guys.
true.
I don't
That's
typically
like
wave
the-
at people when I'm feeling
the
glum.
weirdest,
Having
honestly,
people
the
tell
creepiest detail in the entire thing, because you're just like, well, what
me-
do
Yeah.
you do with that? How do you respond to your doppelganger just waving to you on a bus driving away?
As
Yeah,
it gets what you
it's-
want.
That'd be a hard thing to respond.
It's like, okay, for Good Vibes, it seems like the two of them are completely intertwined, and for Running Away, they're as separate as can be.
That's true, man.
What's the name of the line? What is it? Intersecting line where they cross once and then never again?
Oh no, I'm not good at math, girl. You can't ask me this.
An X.
Okay, I think it's time to move on to alternate selves.
Yep.
Okay. I would like to say that Running Away, it reminds me a lot of The Replacement.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Because not only is he being replaced by himself, basically, but at the end, he's realizing he's become meaningless because he's replaced.
And you're
Yeah.
left wondering,
It-
is he really bringing roses?
Yes.
That's what it's
Alternate
called, right?
selves.
Alternate selves, yes.
Does anybody want to lead this one?
It's a lesbian, so I might as well. So, Bobby's Burning Blue.
My favorite hot sauce.
Oh, what a great opening track. When I first heard this track, I don't know, it has a sort of a nostalgic sound to it. it sounds very fuzzy. And, obviously it has the lyrics for Burnin' Love incorporated in there. So, overall, it's very... Oh, I'm remembering.
To me, it's an interesting way to start off the album, because we got just the new collaborators immediately out the gate with this song. I think it's a weird one to start off with. It makes sense, but it's also at the same time. When I picked up Intruders and I saw the first track was called Bobby's Burning Blues, I was like, what kind of album is this gonna be?
Yeah, and I mean, you get this juxtaposition of something familiar, so the song that they're referencing, and then you get Savon Lion Cub on here, on vocals. And so, you get a little bit of the new, a little bit of the old.
So we've got Bobby, who has a wife, which I respect. And she basically got the feeling that, not the feeling, it's basically blatantly told you that she's bored of her monotonous everyday life where she goes to work, she kisses her wife, and goes kids to school, drives to work, goes home, so on and so forth. But then she kind of snaps a little bit. She snapped. She did that. She finds someone inside herself. Her name is Roberta. She finds Bobby. And she becomes an arsonist.
As
one does. I hate when that happens. And then you've got the song, which, let's just address that particular elephant. She does burn the house down with her family inside, right?
I did not come to that conclusion.
But listen to this. Like, in the lyrics, it says, nothing, she's talking about, nothing makes me higher than the sweet song of fire. I long to see their faces lit up by the glow, fascinated by the gnawing ugliness I know. Why would I cause suffering, and why would I make pain? Why would I ignite the incandescent light of flames when I see them
thought you were
scream
just
and cry?
going up and burning, going out there and burning other people's houses. Because within the story, here's my counter argument. The way it says, Bobby lives until this whore of heat is eaten, consumed by the blaze, and it engenders, roasted, baked, and broiled, and the roar it craves until the next time. There can only be so many next times of burning down your house with your family inside.
I mean, I would say there's no proof that she doesn't murder her family in a horrible arson attack. I think it's
Then
an
why
interesting...
mention it, though? Like, why mention how bored she is with her family?
Because it shows, the motivation for Bobby's existence.
I think that's a valid interpretation of the song, that she's doing it this time. She snapped to the max in this specific song. You could interpret it that way. So she murdered... She lit up random houses before, and now she's burning her own house. You could interpret it like that. I personally interpret it as she's just burning down a random house. Again.
I think she loves her family very much.
I'd like to think so. But that's just where my mind went to immediately. Because I guess I'm
that's
just
because you have
dark.
problems.
I do have problems.
I think it sort of follows this. I mean, this kind of follows from River of Crime, right? The tendencies, people who do criminal acts, the tendencies they have when their sort of alternate life is so completely detached from their normal life is so detached from their criminal life. They do what they can to keep those things separate. Mm-hmm. The maintenance of the monotony depends on the ability of Bobby to thrive. And the way they describe the doppelganger kind of alternate self aspect is so beautiful. I mean, this is one of my favorite Resonance things I've ever read. Bobby is purged, driven out, and stuffed inside a psychic crack called Bobby. Bobby is the key that unlocks Roberta's cage. Bobby is the rapture wrapped around her rage. Bobby fills her emptiness with ecstasy and flames. I mean, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The way that fire is described in the song reminds me a lot of Shroud of Flames from Ghost of Hope. Like, that just... There's a lot of vivid imagery of fire, flames.
And fire is like a metaphor for passion, obviously. Because her monotonous sort of suburban life seems lacking in passion. As much as it is filled with a sort of milquetoast kind of love. She strikes me as a very intense individual. And a desire repressed comes back 3 times as strong, as the saying goes.
Damn.
Shall we move on to Frank's Lament?
This one's strange.
I know. It's weird.
This one I feel like this one's the most abstract.
I think there are more abstract songs
Yeah.
in this album, but this one is definitely weird.
I know. It's weird.
This one feels almost like a Twilight Zone. Just the atmosphere of it feels very Twilight Zone-y. Also because it's like...
It's not as like inline and focused.
That's what I mean. Like, it's not...
It's not as straightforward as I think Bobby's Burning Blues is with the alternate self, because it's sort of built around the doubt that this other self even exists, or if he's just a part of the narrator's mind.
Like, it's like almost as like, he's almost struggling with like a kind of like, is this him or is this not him? Like, is he him or is he somebody else? Or does that make sense? That's kind of like, is he really a pilot or does he really merely imagine he's in control? Is he really there looking over his shoulder? Like,
I
you know
almost
what I
thought
mean?
Does he have alligator shoes?
That the other the person he's talking about, when I was first listening to the song, was maybe just like the computer autopilot, and he's wondering, is he really in control, or if is it just a computer? But then he talks about how at the end of the song, how he cannot separate him from an echo in his soul. So it's like, and that he's only maybe in his mind. So it's so
I think
weird.
this is something that
I
happens
know.
a lot with all these
It's weird.
alternate selves. You see it in Bobby's Burning Blues, right, where this alternate self becomes a response to their environment and their internal worries. You know, and they're so potent, and they intrude so powerfully that they become almost tangible. If not physically, like as a whole separate person, then in their effect.
They become an intruder.
Well, I'd like to note that this actually might be the track maybe people are most familiar with, because this was actually released a year prior for the I Am a Resident thing for those who pledged.
Yeah, it was an early demo version of it, and whoo boy, that guitar makes a world of difference.
They also added some. I can't exactly. There's something to it that they added, and it has a different.
I don't
tone to it,
even.
a lot more lively.
A certain je ne
I don't
sais
even
quoi.
remember the demo because I listened to it like once, and I was like, I'll listen to it again when the album's out. 'Cause I didn't want.
Like, gee, hope they fix it.
No, I didn't want to spoil myself too much.
Yeah, you're like that, yeah. But I actually, Rabbit, I'm gonna contest you on that. I don't think it's the track that people are going to know best, and this is how I'm going to move us into the Haunted by Objects section. I think the track people are going to know best is Voodoo Doll.
Voodoo Doll.
You have a good point, because that's the single.
Voodoo Doll should be playing on every radio station ever, every day until the day we all die, which honestly is sooner than we'd
Right
like
around
to
the corner.
think. Yeah, it slaps.
You know, I just thought
It
about
slaps.
something. Didn't they say Voodoo Doll was just the first single, and they had more?
I mean, I guess the other single
Am I
is
mistaken?
The Intruder. It's definitely, to me, it's my new easy listening Residence track where I just will put it on randomly because it's so good and it's very easily digestible on its own.
There's actually, there's a video out for it, too.
It's awesome.
Can I just say, the guy in the video looks like
I know who
the
you're.
Six Flags guy.
He does.
I was gonna say I
He
know
looks
exactly
like the
who you're
Venga
talking
bus just dropped him off. It's so good. Those Carla notes.
The story. The
Oh my
story is
God.
very simple. It's a guy walking down the street. He gets hit by a voodoo doll.
And it looks exactly like him.
When I, like, 'cause, you know, I'm sitting there, and, like, I read the stories. And so, when I read the stories for Bobby's Burning Blues, I was like, alright, I can kind of see what direction they're heading with this. And I got to Voodoo Doll, and I was like, whoa! This does not fit in with my expectations. I don't know where to go from here. It kind of shook up the preconceptions I had made from the first track. You know what I mean? Like, you get this, it's very evident that it's like, alright, there's an intruder that's, you know, herself, almost like intrusive thoughts or other such things. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, here's just a voodoo doll. What the hell?
You know, with nowadays, every time like I listen to a Residence thing, especially a new one that I haven't listened to, I look for metaphors, and this was no exception. So
Yes.
I was reading over the story and like listening to the lyrics and stuff. And I was thinking, is there a metaphor here, or is it really just that?
That's every single song in Intruders for me. It's like, what is there to get here? There's got to be something. I'm not getting it, and it's gonna be stuck in my mind forever trying to figure it out. But just every track is so just weird and mysterious. I mean,
I know. It's weird.
who did throw the voodoo doll at him? The voodoo doll looks like him, so it's clearly, you know, voodoo doll love him. There's just
And it's filled with like hundreds of pins.
yeah, which is just like again to bring up
Ah!
a point I brought up earlier. Like, what do you do after that happens to you? And then
You just go home, man. You
Hate
just go
when that
home and go to
happens.
I
sleep.
try to poke it with one more needle, see if it works.
I give it a nice massage.
I'd pet the guy. I would name him Ron.
Never mind, I'm not going to say that. We'd get into real dark territory real quick.
Yeah, so there's another track where it seems like there's the same kind of conundrum of like, what is going on here? Is it as straightforward as it may seem? And that would be this next track relating to being haunted by an object or an inanimate thing. The Scarecrow, the third track on this album.
I have a take
That's
I'd like
my
to
French
do.
accent. Yes.
So, I'm thinking now, what if they made all these songs more literal, so they just drive us into our own obsession for trying to find
I mean,
meaning?
that was my initial take of the album. Was just like, I'm confused. Hey, wait a minute. Now the album is an intruder.
It is an intruder.
Yeah.
Ah! All the songs are intruders because they intrude upon your every waking moment. You just sit there puzzling and trying to piece it all together, and one piece doesn't fit, and you're like, I want to make you fit, damn it! Etc.
My real intruder from this album is the old artwork that they had for it. Whatever happened to that picture?
What was it again?
It was like the
It was
really
that dude's
weird, distorted
teeth.
faces.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to the really weird distorted faces we have now.
Epic zebra print.
In this case, they still had their eyes. Well, normal eyes, that is. Their natural eyes.
So the Scarecrow, I feel like, is the residents being like, hey, everybody, did you know we like James Brown? In case you
We do
forgot.
like James Brown.
And you know what? They're right. They should say it.
They should say
This-
it. James Brown's dope.
They never stopped.
Yeah.
I dig that thing he did towards the end there, where like he'd, you know, do stuff and they'd put a cape on him and escort him away. That's awesome. I want to do that one day. I want that to be my life.
You can do that today.
I could do that today. I need to hire somebody. I'm gonna go with Craigslist. Hire someone to put cape on me when I get tired.
Cape boy.
Yes. My entire performance.
So
But-
the story for the Scarecrow is you get this dude. Look at this dude. And he's James Brown has just died, and they're playing his music on the radio. And this guy's driving along, and a scarecrow catches his eye out in the field. And as he takes a closer look, it appears to be wearing James Brown's bathrobe from this one photo where James Brown was arrested. And he keeps staring at this scarecrow, and then he notices that the scarecrow is also covered in crows. And the lyrics are pretty simple. Literally just being the scarecrow is covered with crows, then repeating
And
that.
suspicion.
And suspicion. Oh my god. Residents.
What?
Residents.
Again, like, if you were in this scenario, like, what are you to do?
It gave me this certain kind of vibe where it's like, because it talks about how this dude, like, really liked James Brown. He really looked up to James Brown. I don't know, this idea of, like, when you look up to someone so much and idolize someone so much, but they're still very much human, and that, like, when that really hits you, when you realize that they're just as fallible and, human as you are, like, they're just a person.
Even elevating the, like, I think it ties back into, like, the cape thing you mentioned, sort of the performative aspect of it, this very outward, bold, glittery kind of image that we craft of our idols. But at the same time, there will always be moments, sometimes moments that last for longer than the moment of idolization, of humanizing them and not being able to feel
the same way.
Yeah. Seeing
Which I think that's what it
respect,
seems like in this. Like, something is tarnished, and, like, the image is just...
Yeah,
ruined.
and I think, if you read the story, there's a good amount of, what's the word? When you... juxtaposition, when they're talking about the picture that's burned into the main protagonist's brain, which is described as a mugshot.
Have you guys seen that picture?
I have. We can put it in the show notes. But it's a mugshot of the godfather of soul. Reveals a sadly disheveled James Brown, reeking of pathos and wearing what appears to be the exact same robe. So it's like, this is the godfather of soul, but it's also just not good.
A mugshot of some dude.
And mugshots are never very, what is the word? Good looking. And then also just the fact that this scarecrow is just abandoned in the middle of nowhere, covered with crows. So it's even not doing its job of scaring crows away. It's abandoned by everyone. So it's almost like, this legacy.
The world
this
moves
legacy of James Brown is no more, and what this man stumbles upon is just this sort of relic.
The reality
of the past,
the reality of the situation,
and how time has moved on.
And so for the residents, this seems almost like a cautionary tale to the fans. And I mean, they are not so bold or as lame to do something so straightforward, but I mean, it's something to take into consideration as fans of anything. You get obsessed with the image, but at the same time you crave the reality. But you don't actually crave the reality, you crave the ability to solve the mystery, to see something that other people haven't seen, to know the secret. But the secret isn't actually something you want. I mean, this actually reminds me of Gingerbread Man with beware of what you want. It might want you more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, you've got, like, James Brown's, like, career. Like, a lot of people like James Brown who were, like, supremely famous and well accomplished, like, towards the end of their lives. Like, I'm pretty sure right before he did Blues Brothers, he was, like, at a major, like, low point in his career. Like, nobody... These people who, like James Brown, who, like, were absolutely idolized and celebrated for their, like, spectacular talents, time goes by, the world moves on, taste changes, and who cares? And that's what I think is very emblematic about this. Like, not only the idea of the mugshot, like how far someone like that could fall, and the scarecrow, just a scarecrow with crows all over it. You know what I mean?
We sent our junior reporter, Sparky, out into the field.
You got the scoop?
To sit down, to talk with Mr. Feldman.
We sent him armed with questions, comments, mostly just questions and comments, and he came back with a slew of information that is absolutely indispensable.
You won't even believe half of it.
You won't even believe half of it.
If you are a fan of the classic BOGcast that Sparky did before, you're in for a treat, because this is basically like a brand new episode of the BOGcast right here. Plus, if you've listened to that original Eric Drew Feldman interview, you might have known that there was some background noise in his previous interview with him. And let's just say we followed that up, and there's plenty of background there's plenty of background noise in this interview, so we apologize.
Think of it as the doppelganger to the BOGcast interview.
Without further ado, Sparky,
take it away!
Take it away!
Hey, take it away.
April 34th, 2197, BT.
Hello everybody, Sparky here with the wonderful, talented, multi-instrumentalist and composer Eric Drew Feldman. Say hello, Eric.
Hello, I just want to clarify one thing you just said was, it sounded like you said Erica Drew Feldman. And I do have a friend that she calls me Erica, but I'd rather keep that under wraps. So forget I said that, but my name is Eric.
Let me do that again. Eric Drew Feldman, and we are sitting in a lovely, if not slightly noisy, little French cafe here in a quiet corner of San Francisco.
And, it's a noisy cafe in a quiet corner.
It is.
And anyway, I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you.
So let's talk away.
All right. So first, let's start by introducing yourself.
Okay. My name is Eric Drew Feldman. I am 63 years old, and I'm not ashamed of it. I currently and gleefully play with the residents. In my past, I've played with such luminaries as Captain Beefheart and the Pixies and PJ Harvey and Snakefinger, and I'm sure I'm leaving out somebody, but I loved playing with you just as much as any of those.
And how did you first become aware of the residents?
Before I moved to San Francisco, probably around 1979, I was in LA, and somebody gave me this mixtape, and because I was very involved with, I knew all this new music was going on, but I was kind of busy. I was in my Beefheart days, and on this mixtape there was various things, and there was music from San Francisco, a lot of it. And I'd been thinking about moving there, but one of the cuts on it, and I can't remember, I remember now, I don't know the real name of it, but I think it's, the one where it's a resident song, where they're saying ships are going down.
Oh, not available.
Not available. I was thinking it was either that or Duck Stab. I couldn't remember. And I just found it really beautiful and sad, and I really liked it. And then there was also The Spot was on it. And so I made it, when I decided to move up there a because I'd always lived in L.A., and part of the thing was because I was seeing a woman at that time that lived in Vancouver, but that was a little too far. But I thought, well, San Francisco will get me a little closer for riding the Green Tortoise or whatever it was called back then to get up to visit. And so anyway, when I got to San Francisco, I ended up in the Lower Haight because where I still live today, because I was interested in these synthesizers called Surge synthesizers, and the shop was right there, which I ended up living in for quite a while. And but I realized that where the residents were located, which was on the records, was this address, infamous address 444 Grove Street. So I thought, oh, that's right down over here 4 blocks. So I walked over there and knocked on the door one day, and much to my surprise, somebody answered the door and let me in. And, that was kind of how he introduced it, and they were aware of me because I think they were acquainted somewhat with the music of Captain Beefheart. And, we just started having chats. And to be honest, I was kind of sniffing around, like saying, here I am, new dope in town, exploit me to your fullest. And what they did was kind of push me towards Snakefinger, because as I didn't know them, but it's kind of become aware of later, was he had done a couple records with them. And I think they kind of wanted him to branch out and do something different and not be so, they were trying to push him out of the nest a little bit. And so they were kind of pushing him towards somebody else that perhaps he could collaborate and make records with. So I went over there to meet the residents, but ended up really meeting Snakefinger. But they were very pleasant guys, so we, kept in touch.
When did you first start actually working with the residents?
Really, I didn't do any official work with them until I think it was 2002. And at that time, I'd been doing the previous couple of years a lot of touring with Frank Black and PJ Harvey. And I don't really, it's so long ago, but I just remember they said, how would you like to, tour with the residents? And I said, I'm in. And they wanted me to do another project before that one, but I wasn't available. But luckily they gave me another chance, and it turned out to be Demons Dance Alone. But it was really just to play live, which I really enjoy doing, but I'd much rather be part of the recording process. Just put, pee in every corner, sort of.
So, on that note, describe your current involvement with the residents.
Well, that started on a similar note as in 2002 or 2001 or whatever, when they actually called me. They said I was sort of given this spiel that
Charles Bobuck
was kind of getting through with touring, and he didn't really want to do that anymore. And would I be, interested in doing that? And interestingly, my fascination over the years with the residents, though I didn't know it at the beginning, had a lot to do with the work of Mr. Hardy Fox. And so I was sort of slightly disappointed that he wouldn't be part of what I was doing. I'd be, kind of doing replacing him in a sense. Yeah. And now he's made it very clear that it was, which was not up to me, but there was always room for him if he wanted to do something. And for like half of that touring, but it ended up he was still touring. He was like doing other things like stage sort of setup and lights and all this stuff on the first half of the Demons Dance Alone shows. And I quite enjoyed doing that. Well, I liked the result. It was my first experience with playing incognito, and it's never particularly that much fun doing that. It just, it's a little claustrophobic and all that. And then we did that, and then for whatever reasons, after that tour, and I now know that tour is considered a pretty high mark in their history, and something to like a lot of people. But I didn't know that then. I didn't have the history thing. And whatever their next project was, I was not, asked to do it. And everything had seemed pleasant. And when I saw them again next, like 6 months later or a year later, and I was kind of kidding, but I said, well, I was sorry that I was fired, because I really enjoyed it. And they both kind of frowned at me, like they didn't get it as a joke, and they said, that's not what it's about, But I know they were really working on making things smaller, and I think they had probably decided that it was more cost efficient to have
Charles Bobuck
doing what he always did, was, being up on stage and playing some form of synthesizers. And then it went on till, I'm going to guess it was about 2015. And we had this sort of same meeting with the three of us, and they were kind of explaining what they'd been up to for the last couple of years, and wanted me to do it. And I said, I think I can do that now for a while. And I said, I would love it. But, just know that it's okay if you want to fire me again. It's quite all right. I won't take it personally. And
Charles Bobuck
adamant that he really didn't want to do it anymore. And in terms of going on tour. And so pretty much that's how that started. And that we were doing a tour that was called Shadowland, and that had started with
Charles Bobuck.
They've been going for a while. But I got into about a year of it, and once I did it and felt in and saw what it was required of me to do, I kind of saw what
Charles Bobuck
he was doing, and I went, well, I think I could do it my way. It would be a little different, and it would be more interesting to me. And I meant no resistance from
Randy Rose
or
Bob.
And we just started. It just kind of went from there. And then the next thing after that was, I guess, talking about making a record that became Intruders. And then we, after somewhere during that or before it, I'm really bad on timelines. But we also started, we did a show of a bunch of new old songs, and that was called In Between Dreams. And so at least I got to approach that version of the live residence with an open slate and kind of figure out for myself what I should do. So, and then, I was really pleased that, I was asked to co-produce and, record and contribute to the next Residence record. I think I did this one song,
Randy Rose
called me one day and said, hey, I have to, the Residents have to do this song for this artist in France, and he's got an exhibit at the Pompidou or something, and I've sort of got a song here. It was a song called Doors, and he sent me a demo of it, and I got some multi-tracks of it, and saved a little bit of it, and re-recorded it, and it was a blast. It sounded, and he liked it, and we sent it to this guy, and so we were kind of on the way, and then the next thing was starting to do songs from that became Intruders.
So, speaking of Intruders, this is a very unique album, and on it we hear...
Oh, sorry.
Of course.
Here's my... and then we'll go there. But I knew there was something like, oh, this is too pat. There was a record in between that was called The Ghost of Hope.
That is correct.
Because I was thinking, like, I know I've done more than just... Intruders to me is still current almost. And even though it's been done for almost a year. Ghost of Hope, which some of the tracks had been started by, they were all kind of started by
Randy Rose, Charles Bobuck.
Had worked on some of them, and some he hadn't, and so I was still kind of wasn't sure of my ground and what the parameters were, and wasn't stepping on somebody's feet and blah blah blah, but I could pretty much tell by then
Charles Bobuck.
Interested in being part of it. So, but we managed to get a record done.
And a great one at that.
I thought it was really interesting. I realized that it's not. I think a lot of people are. I don't know how much people really liked it, but I think it's really good. It's really tone poemy, and I think the idea of the lyrics, if you're going to call them that, are all from old newspaper accounts, is it's pretty brilliant, and it's
there's certainly nothing else like it out there.
Yeah, and
musically, it's a really unique album. It kind of takes you on a train ride, so to speak.
Yeah,
it kind of hits numerous genres, but still stays a little more period at the same time, but still being very ghostly and spooky, like only the Residents can do.
Which is a place where, in my own way, I kind of live too. And slightly down dark caves and stuff. So, and I found it really fun to kind of, butt heads with some of
Charles Bobuck
tracks and, to figure out what was important. And I was adding things on them. And, at the beginning I was like, oh, is this okay? I was afraid it's just like putting a mustache on the Mona Lisa or something. And, but, nobody complained, so, we just continued on, and that's when I kind of realized,
Charles Bobuck.
He's sort of, in his mind, he's just moved on. And so it was okay. I was just really, at first I was trying to deal with both of them, and then I was just dealing with
Randy Rose.
So, on Intruders, we hear familiar voice, we hear very familiar guitar, but everything else sounds very fresh and new. What was your role, and how did you contribute in the creation of Intruders?
Well, only in the sense that I didn't have any other than some, fairly rough demos from
Randy Rose.
The
Charles Bobuck.
The element was completely non-existent at this point. So it was more open, and I felt more confident in this world. So, and I also listened, and just judging from the past on numerous records of theirs, they always had guest players. And I was always, kind of going, not that it really matters, but trying to find out, like, who am I in this? Am I a resident or am I a guest player? And because they always made jokes out of it, but they were happy to, as they put it. I always think it was kind of a joke, but exploit my presence. Like, I said at least 10 or 15 more people will know who you are. And therefore guests. I just knew some of the musicians that I know that I thought could be part of this, and literally, it's just I always like the sound of the female vocals on some of their songs, and
they've always found such unique and powerful female vocals.
Yeah.
Going back from the very beginning.
Sure. And I'm never sure now, exactly whose voice was who. I mean, I know Lori Amat was on things, and I was familiar with her, but I don't know which voices she were. I always thought some of them were, but I don't know that, was she was a wife of
Resident.
Named
Resident wife.
And I always just went, that must be
Resident wife.
singing, but I don't know. They didn't really talk about it. And then for a long time, before even the Residents, I was a Carla Fabrizio fan, and she was a friend around town. And but anyway, I just
Incredibly talented lady.
yes, very impressive, intimidatingly talented, and so that was it. But just.
So along the lines of new collaborators, I believe that you were in charge of bringing on Sivan.
Yeah, I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a young woman around town. She's from a band called Everyone Is Dirty, and who I had just become acquainted with them because I went to look at a possible studio to record for me in projects, and they happen to be anybody that's kind of looked at studios or been recording in a studio. Part of the thing you have to put up with is somebody coming while you're working and saying, they say, oh, is it okay if somebody walks around in here for 15 or 20 minutes? And some people are like, get it, and some people are like, it breaks the flow, so it depends what they're doing. But they were very friendly, and they were recording in there, and I said, can I just hear what you're working on? And I really enjoyed it, and kind of, I think was originally thinking of maybe there's a place for, I would like thinking like, I wouldn't mind producing this and being involved in it musically. It seemed fresh and fun, but I don't know. It took years. I mean, that was like 5 or 6 years ago, I think. But after a few years went by, I don't know. I just found myself having phone calls, and I met Sivan in here a couple times just talking in this
very cafe.
This very cafe, in this very table.
In this secluded corner.
I was drinking out of this cup.
This same cup of water.
Yeah.
Or vodka, or gin.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
And we just talked, and she started coming by the house, and we've recorded a few things together, and we're entertaining the idea of doing a little project together. We've already given it a name, and so anyway, we, I just thought I'll give it a try. She was not really familiar with the Residents, and I asked her to sing a song and play a little violin, and the first song we did turned out to be a song called Bobby's Burnin' Blues, and I was like, wow, this sounds totally like the Residents and not like anything I've heard. So that, was the beginning of that. And she ended up playing on, I think, 2 more songs on that record.
Well, it really kicks the album off with a very strong start.
Yeah, I totally think so. Luckily it's the Residents, so it's not about, like, as we call in the business, front loading. Meaning like, here's the hits, because though I think the second song, which actually includes Carla singing, which I like to think was my idea, is she sings like just a brilliant operatic voice on it. There's a song called Voodoo Doll. And but anyway, but we didn't record them in order. But in any case, but the record was taking shape, and my old cohort is a woman named Lori Hall, who I recorded a couple of records with it in a band called Knife and Fork, and also a different band that we worked in together that was called Ruby Howl more recently, and she fit right in, and she kind of worked on a song called Missing Me, and so anyway, I was bringing in those people. I knew the person that's ended up singing a song. I thought he did a really good job. I'm trying to remember what it's called right now. I know it's the first song on side 2, but and it's a guy named Peter Whitehead sang that. He's a British gentleman who I kind of know around San Francisco. He's actually a very good tileist. I don't know what the word for that is. And he had done the tiles in my bathtub, around my bathtub. So, but
Randy Rose.
some way similar, I think. And so I can't remember what the song's called, but it doesn't matter. But that's most of the guests on that record.
Do you foresee any re-collaboration with anyone in the future? Or?
Sure, it just depends, what you need. I can tell you right now, there's a guy that I used to do some collaboration with. Really just exploiting his talents. There's a guy around town by the name of Ralph Carney, who was a multi-instrumentalist. Kind of could play something interesting on any instrument you could put in front of him. And he sadly, about a year and a half ago, he had moved to Portland and tripped down a flight of stairs and landed on his head and died. So ever since then, besides the tragicness of that, he's been, I'm really angry with him because I miss him. Or when I was he was really good at playing anything. I want a euphonium. I want Hawaiian guitar. I want this or that. And he could do something, as he would put it, he could play violin. He'd say, "I have a violin." I never call myself a violinist. But he could do enough that it was good in a primitive style that I like better than somebody refined.
Yeah.
But actually, Sivan is also a very good violinist. She's good, and so I introduced that to the sound, and she's very intuitive. You don't have to say much.
I played the violin from the 4th to the 8th grade. It's an incredibly difficult instrument to play well.
Okay.
It takes a lot of talent.
I would think so.
I do not have that talent.
The only thing when I first met Sivan that I thought was interesting is if I would hum something or say, play something that's a harmony to this part. Most people I know would go over to a piano and figure out the notes, but she would just pick up her violin and pluck the notes out. Just totally by ear. That was her reference point. And so I was like, this is a big-brained person.
That's a trained violinist.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's so I had to do with that. I think, as I've learned, that I think
Randy Rose.
Very important in coming up with the concepts, and he knows what he doesn't want. But he's pretty free about it, because they've probably tried anything depending on who they've become friends with at that particular time. And he's never really rejected any particular idea that I've had that way. Like, I'm not sure that's going to work. He just went, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. Okay.
Well, maybe you start having some bad ideas and you might reject them.
Oh, I got plenty of bad ideas, but sometimes on the keyboards or the arrangements, but he was, so it's been pretty smooth that way. I'm kind of, I don't meet any too much resistance, which sometimes is a little scary, because, but I've kind of decided since I've been doing this that when I look like I'm staring out into space, I'm just looking into the past or the future.
Well, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Hopefully you'll check back next week, and until then, maybe we won't let another 13 years go by. See you next time.
Thanks for listening. Check back soon for the conclusion of the episode and our interview with Eric Drew Feldman. See you then.